A federal appeals court in Cincinnati heard arguments in a lawsuit over Olentangy Local Schools' pronoun policy. Parents Defending Education argues that the district policies violate free speech rights of classmates who believe there are only two genders. Lawmakers for Olentangy Local Schools say there are other opinions for students who don't wish to use someone's preferred pronouns. A lower court already sided with the district, and three-judge panel agreed in July. And Wednesday's hearing is a rare instance where the full Court of Appeals will reconsider the decision.
Several months later,
federal court in Cincinnati made a ruling impacting the Olentangy Local Schools District. The court's ruling says the district cannot enforce policies urging students to use gender pronouns that their peers prefer to be called. The court says enforcing those policies would violate the free speech rights of classmates who believe there are only two genders. Parents Defending Education filed a lawsuit in 2023. The district argued its policies were aimed at preventing bullying and discrimination.
I have probably tried to get this message out a million different times, but it had to incubate and I had to have more experiences, had to have a little bit more time to sit with it. But the Sixth Circuit Court in Cincinnati, Ohio, just ruled that cisgender students are basically allowed to misgender trans students.
Can somebody tell me what the hell a cisgender is?
And I want to talk about it because it's another way that supremacy-fueled oppression keeps authentic humans from living. And yeah, there are families who are celebrating the fact that they get to continue to abuse queer people. It's just how supremacy operates. It's just how the cisgender dominant gender binary safety box that you like to live in. Because oh my gosh, we
What does gender binary mean? Somebody let me know in the comments.
we can't possibly acknowledge anything else except our own lived experience, because if we dare look, oh my gosh, we're gonna die. Sixth District Court, I'm gonna call you what you are. Abusers.
Thank God for common sense. This is exactly why we need Christians in government. I don't know where a lot of Christians have gotten this idea that, well, probably because of the Constitution, where it talks about the separation of church and state. The way that the forefathers formed it was so that the state didn't get involved with religious liberties. They didn't get involved with coming into the church and dictating what could be spoken about or what couldn't be spoken about, what doctrine could be talked about, like, you know, the alphabet community, like sin, okay, like AB, unaliving children, like adultery, all of the things that go against our creed as Christians. And I feel bad for children that have had to deal with this kind of thing. They go to school and, you know, maybe your classmate, your kindergartner, first grader, third grader, and, you know, another child comes to school and they don't want to be a boy, but they want to be a girl, and they want you to call them Nancy or a girl's name. It's confusing to a child. I mean, life, honestly, for children is kind of confusing. They're just they're trying to figure things out. And we as Christians, we know that there are only two genders. Most people know that there are only two genders. That's been the case in biology since forever. And when this queer and, you know, alphabet community thing was first brought up, it was considered by psychiatrists a form of psychosis, mental disease, right? Gender dysphoria. But now they want to make it part of a sect of human beings, you know, so it's crazy. But I thank God that common sense prevailed. I thank God that someone took the federal government to court and said this needs to stop in schools. So I'm really grateful for that. And I feel people like this young man need to be prayed for. God help them. I love all people, but when it comes to this, what do they call it? Tolerance. I believe that we as Americans, and especially as Christians, have been too tolerant. So much so that they not only want to, live their lives, but they want to impress it upon other people. They want you to call them what they think they are. And, thank God it stopped. But let's continue on. This is Renee from King to Politico. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share.
You're abusers. You are upholding abuse on transgender children. And guess what? Supremacy has duped you.
Boy. So we got to talk about a bombshell ruling that is flying under the radar, courtesy of a federal appeals court in Ohio that ruled that an Ohio school district's policy requiring students to use transgender classmates' preferred pronouns violates their First Amendment rights. So basically, this case involves a school district out in Ohio and its policies on pronouns, gender-related student speech. Now, there are a lot of universities and schools that under their anti-bullying policies, they require that students use the preferred pronouns of a trans student, right? So if a student is trans and they want to go by some, again, preferred pronoun that does not match their sex, then the schools are compelling students to comply with that, right? Regardless of their religious beliefs, their First Amendment rights. They're saying, no, you have to use a student's preferred pronouns. Now, this court has basically struck down this policy as unconstitutional. It is a violation of First Amendment rights. And this is a huge deal on a national level because, again, you have a lot of universities, a lot of schools that have this policy. And since, again, this has implications at the national level, that means that it is possible that all of these other schools across the country that have this anti-bullying policy, this preferred pronoun policy, they're likely violating the First Amendment, which means that they're going to have to get rid of those rules. Okay. And this is a big victory for free speech. And I want to talk about it because, again, this case is flying under the radar. It's not completely over yet. It's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. But regardless, I just want people to understand what's happening here because this issue is an issue that we've been fighting for a long time now, in which you have the woke agenda being pushed in schools. And a part of the woke agenda is compelling students, regardless of their religious beliefs, to use the preferred pronouns of a trans student. And this doesn't just apply to students. You also have this applying to teachers as well, too. There's been cases where teachers have been punished for not going along with the woke agenda, right? Because of their religious beliefs. We've seen these cases happening all across the country.
Ohio teacher told principal using students' preferred pronouns violated her religion. She was forced to resign, lawsuit says.
A former Ohio middle school teacher said she was forced to resign after she told her boss that she would not address students by their preferred pronouns because it violates her religious beliefs.
About a week before she resigned, two of Garati's students requested that she use names associated with their new gender identities rather than their legal names. The suit states that one of the students also wanted to be addressed by the preferred pronouns. The lawsuit notes that the school had adopted a policy that required teachers to use preferred pronouns of students. I was reading this story. The one thing that became evident to me is that a lot of folks either A, failed high school civics, or B, you have forgotten everything they taught you in high school physics, because separation of church and state or the freedom of religion does not mean that we have to be dictated by Christian doctrines that says that we have to always already conform to whatever Christians believe.
Separation of church and state in this instance means that your religious beliefs does not outweigh what the policy is when you're supposed to be conducting your job. Y'all imagine a Muslim American making this argument in a schoolhouse? Could y'all imagine? Let's keep on going. Because the request went against her religious beliefs, Garati met the principal, Casey Carter, in the hope of reaching a solution that would allow her to continue teaching without violating her religious beliefs and constitutional rights. Man, y'all be weaponizing constitutional rights, showing me that you have legal illiteracy. You have the lack of understanding and reading when it comes to legal situations. According to the lawsuit, Garati told Carter that she would not use the student's preferred pronouns, and the suit states that she was later called into a separate meeting with Carter and Monica Mize, the district employee. People in the back. I was raised in a Southern Baptist missionary culture, and I recognize all the ways in which we're taught to believe. I also recognize that though we're taught about the freedom of religion and separation of church and state, for some reason we believe that laws and policies should always center Christian doctrine.
All right, y'all, quick break from the show because this is important. Look, we talk a lot here about standing up for yourself, not letting big corporations, the government, or anybody else push you around. But what happens when real life hits, car accidents, workplace injuries, medical mistakes, and suddenly you're the little guy going up against a massive insurance company? Well, that's where Morgan & Morgan comes in. There's a reason reporters never run out of breaking news. Just like there's a...
Wait, did I understand what this gentleman was saying? I thought that he understood the separation of church and state. But it sounded to me like he was actually taking the side of the alphabet community. He grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and he felt that Christians usurped their way onto other people. Like, you know, almost like the interpretation of the Constitution shouldn't have been looked at from a Christian standpoint. It should be looked at from the standpoint of the forefathers, the founding fathers. Who are they? How did they found this country? On Judeo-Christian principles. Okay? So I really don't understand why this is an argument, to be honest with you. I feel that, well, I know that Satan will take something and just twist it totally around so that what's right is wrong and what's wrong is right. And it sounds like that's what happened here. Am I wrong? Somebody let me know in the comments. But I'm doing this reaction to a Black conservative perspective. I'm going to make sure I put his information in the description. Okay? All right, let's continue to check this out.
Because at the end of the day, protecting yourself and your family isn't just common sense. It's conservative values in action. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Amendment protections after a court decided one school district's pronoun policy violated students' constitutional rights. The federal appeals court ruled a school district in Ohio could not punish students who do not call a transgender student by their preferred pronoun. It is a legal decision that's going to have precedents across the country, and it's all thanks to a lawsuit filed by Defending Education. The senior director for communications there, Erica Sanzi, joining us now with more on this massive win for the organization. Good morning to you. Good to see you. Happy Friday.
Good morning, Jan. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you know, this case, as we know, has been going on for 2 years. Your organization states that it is the most expansive defense of student First Amendment protections since the 1960s. So walk us back a bit. Tell us about the lawsuit and how this all began.
So in 2023, our organization sued the Olentangy local school district in Ohio over their harassment policies and codes of conduct that clearly violated students' First Amendment rights by compelling students to use preferred pronouns to affirm the gender identity of their classmates and peers, even if doing so was contrary to their, deeply held beliefs. And if students had failed to comply with using those preferred pronouns, they faced punishment that ranged from, no contact orders to suspension and even expulsion. So this was clearly a problem on First Amendment grounds. But what's interesting is that this was a long process for us because we lost in the lower court. And so we appealed to the Sixth Circuit. And then when you appeal, your case gets heard by 3 judges in that circuit. So we lost again. So then we did something that I would never have known about this until I was part of an organization that did this. We petitioned for something that's called an en banc hearing, which basically means that the whole bench of all the judges in the Sixth Circuit would hear your case. So our attorneys felt that we were on such solid ground that if we could get all 17 judges to hear the case, we would win. And we were granted that petition to have the whole bench hear the case. And so
And actually, it sounds like they had the most liberal judges. If there were only 3 that she could see, that those were the liberal judges that made that decision.
ultimately were victorious, with 10 of the judges siding with us and 7 against.
Yeah. So basically what it sounded like to me is that initially when they kept losing the appeals, is because they kept getting stuck with woke judges, right? Woke judges was like, no. It's totally fine to punish a student who doesn't want to use the preferred pronouns of a trans student, despite their religious or deeply held beliefs, right? So that's kind of how it goes with these courts. A lot of this comes down to what judge you get, right? And in this case, I think they just got unlucky. They kept getting these woke judges. But then when they decided, you know what, let's actually get a full panel, okay? Lo and behold, right, they ended up with it. So, I just think it's funny how that works. A lot of this stuff really is dependent on what judge you get. And that's why you see so much of this stuff, especially, initially, right, you'll get some woke judge that will rule some way, and then the appeal court will weigh in, and then you'll have, a panel of judges, or you'll have, a different judge that's not so woke, and it'll get overturned, right? And we've seen that happen so much throughout this year. All these woke judges getting overturned because they're ruling not based off the law, not based off the Constitution. They're ruling based off their ideology. And there's a whole lot of that within our judicial system. And that's why you see stuff like this. They hope that these parents, that conservatives are going to give up, and we're not going to give up. Because, to me, I think it's pretty obvious that it is a violation of the First Amendment to compel speech of students that is against their deeply held beliefs or their religious beliefs.
So this was a slow and steady wins the race sort of process. But yeah, in the end, it came out on our side. And this is a very big win for the First Amendment in schools, because, again, it's not that you can't use preferred pronouns, or out of whether it's courtesy or just kindness, or you don't care about it, or it does align with your beliefs, but you cannot force students to use them if they don't want to.
Yeah, I was reading the decision here, and put differently, I think, as your organization mentioned, pronouns have the power to validate or invalidate someone's perceived sex or gender identity, and schools cannot effectively compel their preferred viewpoint. I want to read what Defending Education President and founder Nicole Neely said. She said, "We are deeply gratified by the Sixth Circuit's intensive analysis, not only of our case, but the state of student First Amendment rights in modern era. The court's decision and its many concurrences articulate the importance of free speech, the limits and perils of public schools claiming to act in loco parentis, and the critical role of persuasion rather than coercion in America's public square." And loco parentis, by the way, is in place of parents, is what that means,
Yes.
which is really the crux of so many of these cases where common sense is now prevailing. And parents are telling these, quote, educators to start teaching and stop trying to replace what they are doing at home. What kind of reaction have you received from this? What's the school district saying as a result?
I haven't actually seen any reaction or comments from them yet. Also, just for the audience, the Sixth Circuit is Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. So those are the states where school districts would have to get in line sort of immediately. But now we have this really strong precedent so that it can be used in cases across the country, because this is not an unusual policy in school districts. But yeah, I've seen a lot of celebratory commentary among lawyers and on both sides of the aisle, I think, because they felt that this was such a First Amendment violation. But certainly there's been outcry online about, some people think that, I think they've accused our organization of supporting bullying. But really, when you think about it, the bullying is telling students what they can and cannot say. So this is a huge win for us. And another example, I really think that sometimes it is that sort of slow and steady does win the race. And in this case, it took a long time, but it turned out really well for us.
And quite
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm glad that they were persistent and they didn't just give up, because a lot of these judges in the lower courts, more specifically, they're woke and they're not ruling based off the Constitution. They're ruling based off their woke ideology. So like I said, this has national implications. Basically, at this point, it essentially means that all of these universities, all of these schools, these school districts that have this pro-down policy, I can imagine a lot of schools out in California and these blue states have these policies in place. It's unconstitutional. And I believe that if this is appealed to the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court is going to side with the parents. They're going to side with the Constitution, right, with the First Amendment, and they're going to uphold this decision. So, again, this is a major victory for the First Amendment. And let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.
So what do you guys think about that? You think this is the right decision to make sure that the courts and the schools abide by our First Amendment rights? I do. But let me know in the comments, okay? And make sure you like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.